I was the last of my friends in college to reach the legal drinking age. So for my birthday, they decided to take me to the famous bar across from Columbia University, where we all lived, the West End Pub. They had, I was told, great beer and sensational French fries, which they fried in pure vegetable oil and never fried anything but potatoes, so it was okay for us to eat. It was, of course, to be a momentous event. First legal drink. And my friends ordered a huge mug of beer for the table. Well, truth be told, I never even liked the smell of beer. And having been to many a football game at the Orange Bowl, I was all too familiar with that smell. But I dutifully took my first sip, and everybody recited a Shehechiyanu, and they shouted out of the Chaim. You know, you can do that across the street from Columbia University without anyone thinking it's strange. In fact, we got a chorus of responses with Amen and L'chaim from the other people in the bar. Well, the taste was as bad as the smell. I ordered a Diet Coke, but the French fries were, in fact, amazing. Now, why do I tell you this story? Because on that day, I was carded. I had to present my driver's license to prove I was, in fact, of drinking age. Now, fast forward to April 2020. And I'm standing in front of Winn-Dixie at 7 a.m. in the morning because I heard that from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., seniors could shop there without any younger people to crowd the store or carry in the virus. So I'm now 69 years of age. My white beard covered up by a mask and my white hair covered by a hat. And I see people taking out their licenses in case they need to prove they're older than 65. So with my white hair and beard being invisible and then not knowing that I have sported that look since I was 50 years old, I prepared to be carded again, like I had been carded when I was 18 for my first and last sip of beer. As Kohelet says, Ein chadash tachat hashamesh. There's nothing new under the sun. But I knew that this moment of being carded was profoundly different. That turning 70, as I will in October, during this period of COVID, was so much different than it would have been in a normal year. Now, I do understand the math of turning 70. My daughter, Dahlia, is a math teacher. I understand that when I was carded at age 18, a symbol of the beginning of my adult life, and that everything was before me, studies, career, marriage, family, even a perfect season for the Dolphins. Now, in 2020, being carded meant that most of that was behind me, and that although what was in front of me was still very exciting and filled with potential and newness, there was significantly less in front of me than there was behind me. I understood all that perfectly and rationally, but this was different. I was in line at Winn-Dixie because every day, usually, quite frankly, several times a day, I was being reminded that I was at extreme risk, that I had considerable higher vulnerability, is what they said, for a very bad outcome if I contracted this virus. And what kept running through my mind was the Insana Tokef prayer on high holidays, where it says, who shall live, who shall die? And disease is there, of course. But now there's a big asterisk. And it says if you are over 25, this could easily be you if you don't take extreme care. So although I approach my 70th birthday with no underlying health issues, thank God, which I prefer over the words comorbidity, and I sense a minimum amount of physical or mental diminution, I still hear every day that by virtue of turning 70, I am now at extreme risk. In other words, I walk around every day thinking about the high risk of living at this age during this pandemic. Who of us hasn't thought during this pandemic about whether our wills are in order, whether there were things that needed attending to just just in case. Just in case has become a basic thought process that has impacted not just the post-65 group, but many younger people as well. Living with the notion of just in case and being at high risk is the reality that stares me in the face every day as I stand here just 1 month before reaching 70, with a clear understanding that if I'm not really careful, reaching 70, although never guaranteed even before COVID, has a much lower degree of guarantee or assuredness than it did when I turned 69 pre-COVID. So what have I learned as I approach my 70th year? First of all, I've learned that God, in fact, has a sense of humor. You know, there's no humor in the Bible outside a few lines in the book of Esther, and that's a Persian book. There's little humor in the Talmud, and what we think is funny was probably not meant to be from their perspective. Or maybe the rabbis are really British, and what they thought was funny, well, it isn't really that funny. But even if the Bible and the Talmud are basically humorless, God is not. God has a sense of humor. Here's the proof. Why is it that suddenly, as you approach this age of 70, all the hair on the top of your head is suddenly sucked into your scalp and comes out your ears and your nose? What is that? It takes a creator with a sense of humor to make such a thing happen. Fear not, I found the solution. Have you noticed how the kippah on my head has been growing in size over the last 5 years? You know, they say man plans and God laughs. I say God plans and sometimes man has to laugh. That's how we get through this. You know, the other year, a company by the name of Ticker came out with a watch, different kind of watch. You fill out some information about your health and your habits, and then the watch is programmed to tell you the present and how much time you have left until you die. While I'm not prepared to tell you when that is, I will say that if the watch is correct, I will make it through this sermon, and you know how long that could be. Then I saw a movie called The Bucket List a while back. It was a good movie. 2 dying elderly men deciding to create a bucket list and accomplish as much as they could before dying. Well, I didn't have a bucket list, so what do? I Googled it to see what it had. Maybe I get some suggestions. The first list that came up had 101 things to do before you die. So I looked at my watch and I realized, I don't have enough time to do 101 things. So I focused on the first 5 suggestions. Number 1, travel all around the world. That's good. We'd like to see some places we haven't seen. But most of them don't have our grandchildren. So we'll do some of that when COVID passes, but it's not a number 1 priority. Number 2, learn a new language. Listen, I'm still working on English and Hebrew, so I'm skipping that one. Number 3, try a profession in a different field. Well, I'm perfectly happy with my profession. If I can continue teaching part-time, that's fine with me. I did want to be a professional baseball player, but I don't think that's going to work out. Number 4, run a marathon. Yeah, sure. Run a marathon. That's how you shorten your life clock. I'm skipping that one. Well, that bucket list wasn't for me. I like the bucket list that my colleague, Rabbi Mitch Wolberg, created as he approached his 70th year a few years ago. It's a list of things he wasn't going to do. He wasn't going to do. Because as he wrote, there are so many things that are a waste of time and need to be avoided at all costs when your time is limited. So here's my bucket list of what I'm not going to do before that ticker ticks out. I'm not going to tell my children what to do. That comes from the wisdom of understanding that just as many of us chose to live differently from the way our parents lived, so too our children are going to live differently from the way we do. And all we can do is hope that their choices work out well for them, and that somewhere embedded in their lives are the values and principles that reflect what we try to model and teach them. Number 2, I'm not going to wait around for thank yous from anyone. I've met and talked with so many people who think about and talk about what they did for this one or that one. I did it for this office, I did it for that business, I did it for this kid, I did it for that relative, and I never got a real thank you. Gratitude is a very important thing, and when someone expresses it to us, we're really overjoyed and fulfilled. But don't waste time waiting for it. You don't have that much time to waste. If we did something for children or grandchildren, and chances are we did a lot. If we did something for a friend or a colleague or a business or an office we worked for, then we need to be happy with ourselves that we did it. To be satisfied that we did the right thing. If a thank you comes, enjoy it, relish it. But don't wait for it. Don't let it cloud any other decisions you make about further helping them or others. If we help kids or friends, it's because we wanted to, and it brought us a sense of satisfaction and pleasure and the knowledge we did the right thing. The rabbis say that the reward of the mitzvah, the good action, it's the action itself. They understood that waiting for a thank you was a waste of time and energy and sours the good things we did that we took pride and joy in doing. Just continue to do good, to help, reach out, because it's the right thing to do and you enjoy doing the right thing. I remember a point in our lives when my brother nor I needed my father to pay the bill when we went fishing or went out to dinner. But our father needed the satisfaction of paying that bill because he so much enjoyed doing things for his boys. Of course we thanked him, but we knew that he got much more joy and satisfaction out of the doing than the thank yous. My third not going to do bucket list item is I'm not going to live in the past. You know, I like nostalgia. I really do. I have very strong attachments to the past. I have only served 3 congregations over an entire 45-year career. The first was 16 years, and the last has been 25 years. Lori and I will celebrate our 50th wedding anniversary in January. I have had 2 Studebakers over a period of 40 years. I still root for the Dodgers. My parents were from Brooklyn. After the Marlins are out of it, which is quite often. And I still listen to 60s music. So yeah, I like nostalgia. But living in the past is a waste of time. A waste of the present and a waste of the future. Yet so many people, as they approach 70, spend their days thinking, I should have, or I could have, I would have. I should have gotten that degree and not this one. I should have spent more time with my children. I should have been there for my parents, if only I'd realized. I should have taken that other job. Remember that line that made Marlon Brando so famous? He was a boxer and he expressed his heartbreak at making bad decisions, missing an opportunity with these words. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Living in the past with I shoulda, I coulda, I woulda is not the way to live your last decades on this earth. Did you ever wonder why at traditional Jewish funerals they stop 7 times as they march the casket to the final resting place? The 7 stops represent the 7 stages in life that we pass through from birth till death. For each one of these stages, we are being taught that we have to learn to stop and let go before we can move on to the next stage in life. From childhood to adolescence, to early adulthood, to middle age, to old age, to all points in between. There come moments in life where we must face up to the fact that time moves on, and so must we. To do so, we have to let go of that previous stage in life and embrace the next. The next thing I have on my not-to-do list is not to be envious of other people, because that is a total waste of time. I still think about the death of Robin Williams. It shocked us all, the way he died. He brought so much laughter to the world in his life. We thought he was happy and successful as much as they could come. He was outgoing. He was fun-loving. He was talented beyond belief. And then we found out he felt all alone, deeply saddened. I realized then we don't really know anyone. It's kind of like the old story of the person who's told he can leave his package of troubles on the ground, then he can go through all the other packages and choose any one he wants, any one of somebody else's life. After perusing a few hundred packages of troubles left behind by others, he decides to pick up his own and continue on his way. There are so many people who appear so much more successful, so much happier, so much more satisfied, but they really aren't. And you're wasting time being envious of them. It's a mirage. But look, I'm not a fool. I know that in truth, there are people who are happier. There are people who have more. They really do. But it's a waste of time to be envious of them for two reasons. First of all, it's a full-time job. Once you are envious of others, you can't think of anything else. It just overwhelms you. I know that in every community there are the haves a lot, and the have-nots. That's a reality. But we can't waste our time looking at all these different kinds of people and determining who we should envy and who we should help or feel relieved because we have it better than them. What we have to do is simply help those that we have it better than. And remember this crazy truth. The have-a-lots are also envious. They're envious of those who have lots more because it's never ending. It's a competition that everyone loses at because they never pause to enjoy what they have. Maybe one of the most brilliant teachings in Jewish tradition is the one which says, who is the wealthy one? Ezehu Ashir. The person who is content with his or her portion. The person who's content with his or her portion. That's wealth. Envy ruins marriages. It ruins friendships. It makes people do what they should not do. It makes people make fools out of themselves. In the end, it gives us nothing. It's a waste of time. And when we hit 70, time is just too precious to waste. And on my bucket list of things not to do, and it's very, very high up there, don't carry a grudge. Who wasn't at some time hurt by a sibling or a friend or a spouse, someone at work? Who hasn't at some time been on the outs with a member of your family? Here's a piece of wisdom, not so much from our tradition, but there's wisdom everywhere, you know. It's called forget about it. Forget about it. I saw a movie, I think it's Italian. Forget about it. There are many reasons for this. First of all, it's really possible we were wrong. Or at least, the other person wasn't so wrong. And in some cases, it was a result of problems they were facing at the time. They were overwhelmed. It really wasn't personal. They had a problem. Your friend invited people to dinner, but not you that time. Or a child has a play date with another child, but yours wasn't invited. Or your mother gave a diamond pin to your sister and not to you. And we eat ourselves up thinking that someone is out to get us. It's personal, when most of the time we really don't know what motivated a person's actions. Maybe they needed a private moment with that couple. You'll get invited to dinner later on. Maybe it just wasn't your kid's turn. Maybe your mother only had one diamond pin. Maybe she'll find something else for you. Maybe they'll invite you another time. Maybe at the time they were upset with you for some reason and they actually intended to slight you. But that was then and this is now. Ann Landers got it right when she wrote, hanging on to resentment is letting someone you despise live rent-free in your head. Life is too short. It's too precious to waste by simply giving it away to someone who hurt you. So forget about it. One of our granddaughters asked me during the summer if I had the book called Tuesdays with Maury. It was on her summer reading list, I think. I found it and I was perusing it. I saw a section which was double underlined. That's my way of reminding myself, hey, this is really good stuff. Tuesdays with Maury was a book developed from a series of Tuesdays that Mitch Albom spent with his old college professor, Maury Schwartz, who was dying from Lou Gehrig's disease. This is what he wrote. My old college professor told me of an old friend with whom he had lost touch. Once they had been so close, but a silly little argument had split them apart. I found out last year, Maury said, that this friend had died of cancer. And Maury began to weep openly. And he said, I never had the chance to make up to him. I never had the chance to say, I'm sorry. Why did I let that stupid argument separate us for all those years? If there's anyone you care about that you're fighting with now, Maury told Mitch, let it go. Say you were wrong even if you think you were right. Who cares? Because I promise you, when you get to this point in your life, and he looked down at his dying body, you won't care who was right or wrong. You'll only want to savor every minute you had with them. That's what you learn when every day, multiple times a day, you hear that you are vulnerable, that you are at great risk, that you need to be extra careful, that you are about to be 70, and that means your very life is at risk. And that brings me to the last thing I'm not going to waste my time on. And that is, I'm not going to waste my time thinking about death. I'm going to continue to be careful. That's prudent. Not thinking about death is hard for human beings because all of us, all of God's creations, we're the only ones who know the clock is really ticking. In fact, it's really an obsession with people thinking about death. You know, there was a book the other year called Heaven is Real. It was about life after death. You know that it was on the bestseller list for 200 weeks? Heaven for real. You're worried about the next life? But our wisest teacher, Moses, said it best in his final words to his nation, Uvacharta b'chayim, you shall choose life. Death will come in its own time. It's our obligation not to make it easier for death to find us. So everyone, be careful out there. But while we are doing that, we have to choose life. Focus on life. Live it to its fullest no matter what the circumstances are that we face. We don't know what the future will bring. You know, my favorite cartoon about this year of COVID, shutdowns, testing, deaths of far too many, shopping almost exclusively online, keeping physical distance from pretty much everything. My favorite cartoon is the one based on Back to the Future. Doc sees Marty getting into that time machine car, and he yells out to him, Marty, whatever you do, don't go to the year 2020. Well, we didn't have the choice. We're in the year 2020. So if I don't waste my time telling my kids what to do, I don't wait for expressions of gratitude, I don't get stuck in the past or spend time being envious or nurturing grudges or thinking about death, well, then what am I going to do with all the time on my hands? Well, I hope I will be privileged to continue to do some teaching as long as I remain a capable teacher. That's why I really became a rabbi. I wanted to teach the genius of Torah and Judaism. And you and the community have been so gracious to allow me to continue teaching Torah. But for the most part, I want to work on creating memories with our grandchildren. And believe me, that can be an almost full-time job. There's a new clock ticking as I approach my 70th year. It's the clock that asks, how old will I be when that one is 10 years old? How old will I be when that one has a bar bat mitzvah? Or this one gets married? The numbers can get scary. But there are goals. Some will be reached, others will not be. A wedding of a granddaughter, I was privileged to conduct 3 years ago. Eden and Zaki. Lori and I have been already to the bar bat mitzvahs of 4 grandchildren, and there are 3 more coming up in the next 18 months, then 8 more after that. But a goal I actually never contemplated, certainly not reaching before age 70, is inexorably moving towards realization. Our first great-grandchild is due to arrive literally on my 70th birthday. Our eldest granddaughter, Eden, and her husband, Zaki, are pregnant. Now, we doubt that COVID will allow us to be in Israel for that birth. So people ask me if that angers, depresses, or saddens me, you're going to miss the birth of your first great-grandchild. COVID angers me because should it never reached our shores or the shores of any country outside of China. It depresses me because it has wreaked havoc with so many families and individuals worldwide. It's caused so much death. It saddens me because it has caused so much death. People died before their clocks had wound down. Not being there for the birth of a great-grandchild, as I would say, it's a disappointment. Gamze Yavor, this too will pass. I don't harp on it, nor will I even ask them to Zoom it, nor will I dwell on it because I can't change it. And when the time comes that we can meet and hug that first great-granddaughter, will it be the greatest Shehechianu moment of our lives? No. It will be another in a series of great Shehechianus in our lives, and it will, God willing, not be the last. That's what turning 70 means to me. Remembering and cherishing the great Shehechianus, the great thank yous of the past, and looking forward with hope, confidence, and thanksgiving to the future Shehechianus. It sure beats wasting time sitting around for a thank you, nurturing a grudge, or thinking about death. And so I know nothing better to say as I near my 70th year, awaiting the birth of that great-granddaughter. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Shechianu v'kimanu v'gianu lazman hazeh. Praise to you, O Lord, our God, for enabling Lori and I together to reach this special moment. Amen. Good Yom Tov.